What's up guys, my name is Ace, and a couple days ago I did a full breakdown and comparison of all of the assault rifles in Black Ops 6, including stats like their ranges, their time to kill values, recoils, everything like that. And in today's video we're going to be doing the same thing, except this time with SMGs. And without further ado, let's just dive right into this with our time to kill ranking, keeping in mind this is for close range engagements. And coming out on top, we have the Compact 92. This one kills in just 220 milliseconds up close, which is extremely fast. The KSV is just a little bit behind that at 225 milliseconds. Then after that, we've got the C9 at 246 milliseconds, the Jackal PDW at 264, the Tonto 22 at 272, and then finally, the slowest killing SMG in the game right now is the PP919. And this one kills in 288 milliseconds up close. Now, of course, these time to kill values don't take range into the equation. This is just if you're right up close and personal. So let's have a look at our range comparison here as well. And unlike assault rifles, all of the SMGs have 4 separate range values, and we tend to see much larger drop-offs, as you would likely expect with SMGs. So like with the KSV, for instance, up close, it kills in just 4 shots, but at a distance, it drops all the way off to 8 shots. So you really lose a lot of effectiveness as you stretch out the ranges. And I guess a more extreme example is the Compact 92. In its minimum damage range, which is just beyond about 23 meters, it's going to take you 10 shots to kill, which is pretty crazy. And therefore, in this game, they've really kept SMGs in check outside of their effective ranges. Now, within those effective ranges, they're very effective. And our maximum damage range for most of these, outside of like the Tonto for instance, is actually pretty great. Most of them extend between 10 to 15 meters or so. And that's not bad at all for SMGs historically with Call of Duty. And it is worth mentioning, while the PP919 does have the slowest time to kill potential up close, it also has the best maximum damage range out of all of the SMGs. Its 4-shot kill potential extends out to about 16 meters, so it does maintain a bit more effectiveness there. But that's pretty much all I feel is worth mentioning with this. Of course, you can screenshot this for yourself and take a deeper look at it. The main thing to keep in mind, though, is you really want to keep yourself in the effective ranges with SMGs in this game, much more so than many previous Call of Duty games, in fact. Now, of course, that previous chart was only looking at body shots. What about headshots? Well, it turns out, by default, if you're not using that CHF barrel, which boosts your headshot damage, and we're not diving into attachments today at all, I will do those in these separate gun guides when I cover each gun individually. But looking at headshots without that barrel, headshots are literally useless on SMGs in the vast majority of situations, with only a few exceptions. And what I mean by useless is it'll take the exact same number of shots to kill to the head as the body in most cases. The only exceptions here without the CHF barrel are the Tonto 22 at longer ranges. If you mix 3 headshots in with a body shot, you can get a 4-shot kill instead of a 5-shot kill. Then with the PP919, in the 3rd and 4th damage ranges, if you mix 3 headshots in, you can cut down on the number of shots to kill. And then finally, with the Compact 92, in that 10-shot kill range, that minimum damage range, it will be a 9-shot kill if just 1 bullet hits the head out of those 9. So generally speaking, unless you're using the CHF barrel, and unless you're going for headshot camos, there's no benefit whatsoever in aiming for the head with SMGs. Next up, let's get into recoil, and I'm just going to play the recoil test in the background. Yes, I am aware that you have a recoil wall in the firing range. It's not nearly as precise since you can't get far enough away from it, and on top of that, it doesn't display the bullet holes really cleanly, so they overlap a lot more. The way I'm testing here is just a much more precise method of showing you guys recoil patterns. And as you can see here, with the C9, it's got a lot of zigzag to it as it kicks upward, but it doesn't really lean too heavily in any particular direction while it is zigzagging upward. With the KSV, we've got a nice like S-shaped recoil pattern with a fair amount of vertical magnitude to it. The Tonto 22 has a huge vertical magnitude. It actually kicks a lot upwards, but it's a very slow upward climb because it has such a slow fire rate. So it actually looks much worse than it really is. In reality, it's pretty easy to manage and control that recoil on the Tonto 22. With the PP919, keep in mind I didn't fire the entire magazine. I just fired 30 rounds out of the 64-round magazine. Within the first 15 or so rounds that you fire, it kicks upward with a slight lean to the left, and then it suddenly cuts really hard to the right after about 15 rounds fired. So that's just something you have to be prepared for if you are spraying a little bit with this gun. Then with the Jackal PDW, those initial shots kick perfectly straight upwards, which is really easy to control, and then it starts cutting a little bit to the right after that. But if you're getting your kills with your initial few shots, it's a very accurate and easy to control gun. And then with the Compact 92, it doesn't have a ton of recoil, but it is worth mentioning your initial recoil is actually a little bit higher than the rest of the recoil pattern, especially between the 2nd and 3rd shot fired. There tends to be a pretty big jump there, and that's the type of thing that will throw you off if you're trying to stretch your ranges out, which you really don't want to do with this gun anyway, because as we established earlier, you drop off to a 10-shot kill pretty quickly with this gun. Now with SMGs, I tend to avoid using optics, and therefore I think it's important to look at the iron sights. And overall, I actually like all of the iron sights on the SMGs. I have no problem with any of them, and therefore I don't see myself really using optics on these at all personally, but that is going to be a personal choice, of course. And with that out of the way, let's get into our handling stats. And our aim down sight speeds, for the most part, are quite fast, especially with the Jackal PDW and the Tonto 22. These ones are really standouts in this area. And then it's worth noting the PP919 has an aim down sight speed that's more along the lines of what you would expect with an assault rifle rather than an SMG. As for our sprint out times, they're also quite fast on average, as you would expect. Once again, the Tonto and the Jackal PDW come out on top in this area, and the PP919 is on the slower side, but this time it's at least noticeably faster than assault rifles still. And then finally for handling, let's have a look at our reload add time using the default magazine, and keeping in mind this is the add time, which means it ignores any unnecessary animations with your reload. And in this case, the big standout is the KSV. This one reloads very quickly at 1.39 seconds. Most of the other ones are pretty much average, but once again, the PP919 is just not excelling in this area. It's got quite a slow reload speed at 2.33 seconds, but this slower handling and reload speed is the trade-off you make for a 64 round magazine by default. That's really what sets a PP919 apart from the other SMGs. And with that out of the way, let's get into mobility. And I've got an important note here. It turns out after doing more testing with this, the in-game detailed stats when it comes to mobility appear to be inaccurate in many cases, and sometimes by a fairly large margin. So in the assault rifle breakdown video I made, I was just using the stats that they provided in the detailed stats because I made the assumption that they were accurate when they aren't perfectly accurate. They're typically pretty close, and in some cases they are bang on accurate with what you experience in game, but just not all the time, and this does matter. So that is something I will be revisiting in the individual gun guides for those guns, where I dive into significantly more detail with each gun individually and also share the best setups that are optimized using statistics. So if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you like this style of content, make sure you subscribe, especially to catch those gun guides. So getting into the mobility of the SMGs, keep in mind the values I'm about to share are the real values that you actually experience in-game, and they may not align perfectly with the advanced stats. In fact, in some cases, they're pretty far off of what the advanced stats states. As we can see here, when it comes to our base walking speed, the better SMGs in this area are the KSV, Tonto 22, and Jackal PDW, whereas the PP919 and the Compact 92, surprisingly with the Compact 92, they're noticeably slower than the rest at 4.85 meters per second. Then when it comes to our sprint speeds, once again, the standouts here are the Tonto 22 and the Jackal PDW. Then after that, we have our tactical sprint speed. And with this, once again, the Jackal PDW is on top, although it's closely followed by the C9. That one also has a solid tactical sprint speed, whereas the PP919 is the slowest in the category. And then finally, for our aim walking speed, this is where the in-game stats are generally quite accurate. But once again, Jackal PDW is just barely out on top here at 3.65 meters per second. So it's pretty clear if you're looking for maximum mobility, the Jackal PDW is the way to go. And with that, that's all of the important data. Now I just wanted to share my thoughts on the SMGs based on the stats as well as my experience using them. Keeping in mind, my experience is fairly limited, especially with some of the later unlocks at this stage. But overall, we once again have a case where I'm quite happy using all of these SMGs. I feel like they just excel in different areas. They're balanced quite nicely together. There are key trade-offs with each of them, and they each have their own unique character and feel to them. So I'm perfectly happy using pretty much any one of these, although in some cases I find the PP919 just doesn't have the time to kill potential to keep up. And then if I'm playing on maps where I just can't manage to keep my gunfights up close and personal, not that there's many of those maps in this game, but if I can't, then the Compact 92 is quite limiting due to that 10-shot kill potential within its minimum damage range. But outside of that, I'm really just comfortable using any one of these SMGs. If I had to pick my favorites, I'd probably lean in the direction of the KSV, the C9, and I also really like the Tonto 22, especially once you get rapid fire on it. That one just really suits me well, and I enjoy using it quite a bit. Now, of course, those are just my opinions on the SMGs, and this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the SMGs in Black Ops 6 so far, and what are your favorite SMGs to use at the moment? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.